This edition of the program is called the halftime episode.
Let's go.
And the reason it's called the halftime episode is we touched on it last week in last week's program. That I was watching a business meeting that was being televised, and the speaker talked about how the 4th of July weekend is kind of halftime for the year. And he talked about making mid-game adjustments in sports. Very sports-heavy guy. And so we kind of want to flesh that out a little bit more because it led to really good conversation last week. And I think there's more we can talk about in that vein. So let's do that. Let's talk about halftime.
Let's do it. You're halfway through the year.
Right.
It's time to, imagine this, right? You are playing a game.
Right.
You go into the locker room at halftime. You have to, in pretty short order, evaluate the first half of the game.
Right.
So evaluate the first half of your year and what's working. Let's double down on what's working. What's getting us results? What's not working? Let's either adjust what's not working, get rid of it altogether, try something new, and and then go back out for the second half and execute.
Right.
It's that simple. Where it gets a little more complicated though is it's easy to look at what you're doing right and double down on that, right? You're already doing it.
Sure.
The hard part is looking at what's kind of not going right. What's not going well, what's not getting you the results that you're looking for, and then evaluating that, because sometimes that can be mindset.
Sure.
If you know that what you're doing is the right thing to be doing and it should be working, but it's not working, but you're like so sure this works, then maybe it's an adjustment in what you're actually doing, or maybe it's an adjustment in the way that you think about it. And I don't mean to be, hocus pocus or anything, but the truth is what you think about, you bring about.
That's right.
Energy is energy. Vibe is vibe. You don't like standing around the water cooler with Debbie Downer.
Right.
Because you pick up that negative energy, right? So the way that you think about stuff is, call it whatever you want. Call it karma, call it manifestation, call it
the secret.
Yeah, call it the secret. call it prayer works. I don't care what you call it, just do it. Right?
I gotcha.
And so sometimes the adjustment is a little harder to find. It's a little harder to identify, and that takes some introspection, and it might take looking to someone else in your industry that you know and trust, a mentor of some kind, and saying, "Hey, what are you seeing?"
Sure. And it could also be less introspective and be systematized. And if you have a system,
right,
then you can check down what you're doing.
Sure.
To make sure you're doing the right things.
Right.
Right.
The reason that I preach so heavily about tracking your data is because how do you know what's working and what's not working if you don't have the data in front of you?
Right.
Right.
And to make it really simple, if you've seen a professional football game in the last 5 years, they have those Microsoft Surface Pros on the sideline.
Sure.
And every single play, when the quarterback is back on the bench, they're looking at what just happened.
Evaluate.
And they're evaluating it all the time.
Yep.
So if you don't have a plan and you don't have a system, even athletics are systematized now.
Yep.
Fully.
That's a really good point.
You know what I mean? So it makes a ton of sense to do those things. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, we spent a lot of time on the basics last program.
Okay.
Let's talk about more basics and what people should be doing regardless of what business you're in. So the first thing, I guess, would be to have a standardized system of maybe even greeting new customers.
Yeah.
How do you greet new customers?
So let's talk about those 3 areas that we drill down on, right?
Right.
Real estate, restaurants, retail sales.
Okay.
There's got to be a system for the initial conversation.
Right.
Whether it's someone walking into your retail store, it's someone walking into your restaurant, or it's making an outbound call from a referral in real estate.
Right.
Hey, my sister's looking for a house. I told her you'd call. You better have a system
right.
for what you say, what it looks like so that this is why. So that, one, you can track the data, you can know what's working and what's not working and make adjustments accordingly. Two, so everybody gets the very best service you can possibly give. And three, so nothing falls through the cracks.
Okay.
And you're not thinking later, oh, shoot, now I've got to manage this because I didn't take care of it up front. I don't know exactly. I know they want a 3-car garage, but I don't know that, one of the bays needed to be, it needed to be 3 side-by-sides. It couldn't be, or this is more common, it didn't need to be 3 side-by-sides. It could be 2, and one of them's a tandem because they want it for workout space.
Right.
I thought it was for 3 cars. And it's because in your initial conversation, you didn't ask them enough questions.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Sure.
And so, and if you're talking about real estate, that initial conversation is simply to gather kind of some basic information and then set an appointment.
Right.
You want to set an appointment so that you can take a thorough intake.
Right.
Right.
And people don't do that often. Since I've gotten licensed in real estate, I've watched a lot more realtors do what they do up close, as a lender for 22 years. I've been kind of on the other side of that and haven't seen what realtors do. My job as a lender always was to get people so excited that when I was done with that interview application meeting, they were ready to go sit down with an agent and go buy a house.
Right.
Agents, though, that I've worked with have been able to pick up the ball and run with it, but none of them do the thorough intake interview that you have done since you started in this business. And it's really cool to systematize what you do because then everybody does get the best of you. Everybody does get the best of whatever industry it is. I walked into a fast food restaurant the other day and I was horrified because the only thing the person said to me is, "You ready?"
That's probably not in the training manual.
I got news for you. When I learned the fast food business, I grew up in fast food restaurants, right?
Yep, and I grew up in
it was fully scripted. Welcome
style.
into Kentucky Fried Chicken. How may I help you today?
Right.
Scripted.
Yes.
If somebody said, "You ready?" and my dad witnessed that.
Right. My dad would have killed me.
Yeah.
And we had family style sit down restaurants.
Right.
And I'm very grateful for that upbringing because it did teach me a lot initially about customer service and going the extra mile and falling on your sword and taking the blame and don't blame your team member.
Right.
And, if the kitchen screws something up, you don't say, well, the kitchen, yeah.
It's just like lenders who blame the underwriter.
Yeah.
The underwriter's trying to facilitate.
Or a realtor who blames the lender. Or
trying to facilitate the deal.
Yeah.
They're also trying to protect the lender.
Right.
Right? They're not trying to screw up your deal, though.
Right. I had a title company just this morning that bad communication, ineffective, got the runaround, had to reach out to 5 different people before I finally got an answer. Then I got the wrong answer. They didn't answer my question because the communication between who I left the message with and who got the message somehow was miscommunicated. 5 people, and I'm, that's not the kind of service I'm looking for.
Right. Yeah.
And it's been unfortunately consistent with this particular company. And so, it's like, man, it's hard to keep going back to the same restaurant if they screw up your meal every time.
That's exactly right.
Right. We work in industries where we have to take really good care of people.
Right.
Yeah. And, if we don't, they go someplace else.
Yeah.
And I think that's one reason why you and I especially have developed systems to take good care of people. And then when you can combine it with your authentic nature of care for people, genuine care and concern for the person across from you, it's magic, right?
Yeah.
So, I would say a lot of people, just kind of coming back to halftime, a lot of people who are lacking in their goals at this point in the game, right? They get really frustrated and kind of quit doing things.
I gotcha.
well, I'm not going to do that anymore because let's use open houses for an example.
Right.
Well, I've been doing open houses, all year, and I haven't gotten a deal out of it. Let's say that's the scenario.
Right.
Well, so I'm going to quit doing open houses. Well, I have a problem with that because we know that open houses are effective.
Right.
I have my own proof. I have lots of other realtors' proof. Like, there are realtors doing deals with people they meet at open houses every single week.
Yeah. And if open houses didn't work, new construction neighborhoods wouldn't have a model home.
Right.
They wouldn't. That'd be a waste of money.
I would encourage somebody to, sit down with someone that you trust who's successful in your industry and say, hey, would you take a look at my process and give me some feedback? People are scared to do that, though, because they don't want to be corrected. And I'd rather get paid than be worried about getting corrected.
Sure.
I mean, what are we doing?
Right.
I don't get it. I don't understand not being humble enough to show somebody what you're doing and have them tweak it. And maybe it's the coach in me. And I got a call from somebody that I coach. I couldn't pick it up because I was on the phone with my coach. And when I got off the phone, I called back. I said, hey, sorry about that. I was on the phone with my coach. And she was like, how did that go? Yeah, well, she ripped me one. But, whatever. Moving on. That's something that being able to, listen, back to the sports analogy, right? No coach in football is worried about your feelings.
Right. They're not.
Now, I'm never trying to intentionally hurt somebody's feelings. That's just not who I am.
Right.
I mean, not very often. It's very rare. There might be a moment, but I mean, it's just not nobody that I coach ever. But it happens, But just like a coach coaching a sports team, they don't give a rip about your feelings. There's no crying in baseball.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
What if you can't let somebody take an honest look at your process and analyze it and observe it, analyze it, and help you restructure some things so that it's more successful? If you can't do that, what are you doing in any kind of sales at all?
I gotcha. I think what I'm hearing you say is not only at halftime should we reevaluate what we've been doing for the first half of the year, we should also invest in coaching. If we're in sales, we should invest in coaching because then there's someone holding you accountable.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I love about our relationship, right? Mm-hmm. Because we have a coaching meeting, a pipeline meeting every single morning.
Just about.
And let me tell you something. If people were paying for that, that would be expensive.
Right.
But necessary.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And I've paid for a lot of coaching over the years, and it's costly. It is. It costs you money. It's made me better.
Yeah.
Well, and you, by the way, will outgrow your coaches.
Sure.
Just this is a hot tip for anybody who's got a coach. You'll outgrow your coach. At some point, they'll take you as far as you can go, and you need to get somebody else. And that's okay. They get that.